Pam Bondi once bragged she had the Epstein files on her desk ready for release, but what she never explained was the mysterious $250,000 wire transfer that surfaced around the same time. Why would someone tied to one of the most powerful scandals in modern history suddenly receive that kind of money? And why did her public crusade for transparency collapse almost overnight? For anyone watching, that dollar figure should raise one question: was its payment for silence, or proof that the truth about Epstein's files is being buried at the highest levels? Pam Bondi once stood before the cameras and declared she had the Epstein files on her desk, even boasting that transparency demanded their release.
Land and Homeland Security Committee conducting oversight of the president and his administration. Great, because there are many, many things that Congress should be conducting oversight over this administration. Donald Trump campaigned on finding convicted criminals who are unlawfully here in this country and deporting them. The worst of the worst, he said. Instead, he and his unidentified masked secret ICE agents are snatching and arresting immigrants from court proceedings, nonviolent, non-criminal immigrants pursuing legal pathways to immigrate to this country, and then illegally detaining them in horrific conditions, and even possibly deporting them despite the fact that they are here legally. You would think the committee, with jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security, would want to conduct oversight over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out at parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman, I would, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11.
Gentleman is not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman.
recognized for questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman has a motion.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, and Kash Patel, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Chairman, motion to table.
Gentleman has a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table is privileged and non-debatable.
But then whispers began to surface about something else: wire transfers, secret communications, unexplained reversals. How does a bold promise to open the vault of one of the most notorious scandals in modern history suddenly collapse into silence? That's the question hanging over this hearing, and it's the question that should lock every viewer to their screen, because what happened next is not just about a name in a file, it's about how far power will go to protect itself. For 30 seconds in, you should already feel the tension: promises broken, evidence hidden, and the stakes reaching into the very heart of democratic accountability. The story begins with commitments that seemed ironclad. Bondi insisted the Epstein files were within her reach, ready to be made public. Kash Patel for years was a bulldog demanding release, insisting the FBI had no right to hold back information from the American people. Members of Congress on both sides pounded the table demanding full disclosure. This was painted as a rare moment of bipartisan alignment where truth would finally overcome secrecy. But after months of so-called review, the result was a flat declaration: there was nothing to see here. The same figures who had once campaigned on exposure now retreated behind a wall of silence. The shift was so stark, so sudden, that observers had no choice but to ask what changed. Part of the answer lies in history that can't be erased. For years there was a trail of connections: flights on private jets, lavish parties, public praise. These were not rumors whispered in corners but public record, long documented. Reports emerged suggesting that certain names, long protected, might appear in the files. Some journalists claimed there were even videos, the kind that could shatter reputations in seconds. To make matters more tangled, tech moguls stirred the pot with their own statements, hinting that the reason these files remained hidden was because they implicated people with enormous influence. Even social media posts from those at the center seemed to acknowledge damaging evidence existed, while simultaneously dismissing it as fabricated. A denial wrapped inside an admission. For those watching closely, the contradictions only deepened the suspicion. But the files weren't the only source of outrage raised during the hearing. The focus widened to the machinery of government itself, how promises of security had been warped into something else entirely. On the campaign trail, there were bold words about deporting the worst of the worst. The message was tough but narrow: remove violent criminals, keep families safe. Yet testimony revealed a disturbing divergence between rhetoric and reality. Non-violent immigrants, people pursuing legal pathways, were the ones targeted. Masked agents stormed into courtrooms to detain them, disrupting due process and sowing fear. Individuals who had followed the rules found themselves locked away in facilities so harsh they were deemed unsuitable, even for hardened offenders. The gulf between what had been promised and what was delivered was staggering. Oversight should have been the safety valve. Federal law explicitly authorizes members of Congress to inspect detention centers, regardless of party. Transparency was not optional, it was mandated. Yet the Department of Homeland Security refused access, blocking elected officials from viewing the conditions inside. Both Democrats and Republicans were turned away. This wasn't just a bureaucratic snub, it was a direct defiance of statutory authority, a calculated choice to shut out accountability. The question loomed larger: if nothing improper was happening, why keep watchdogs in the dark? The situation grew even more alarming when testimony revealed that federal law enforcement resources were being siphoned away from urgent threats. Agents trained to combat terrorism, dismantle gangs, and disrupt trafficking networks were reassigned to immigration enforcement against non-criminal targets. The very people charged with pursuing predators and protecting children were diverted to paperwork and roundups of asylum seekers. For critics, it was more than a misallocation, it was a dereliction of duty. National security weakened, not strengthened, all in the service of a political agenda. And as these facts surfaced in the hearing, the frustration in the room was palpable. Yet instead of grappling with these charges, the majority in control of the committee fixated elsewhere. They returned again and again to a familiar deflection. Even though the prior administration had been out of power for months, their focus lingered on an old rival, as if repeating the same name could substitute for actual oversight. Witnesses who tried to speak about current abuses were cut off. When the conversation shifted to the most sensitive topic, the Epstein files themselves, the response was procedural sabotage. Motions to table, privileged maneuvers designed to end the debate without confronting it. The public display of stonewalling revealed a simple truth: when scrutiny threatened to land too close to home, the goal became to silence rather than investigate. That silence echoed louder because of the promises that had been made before. For years the line was that the public deserved to know the truth. Bondi, Patel, others, all spoke about how exposing the files was a matter of principle, not politics. But when the moment came, the principle evaporated. The result was betrayal dressed up as bureaucratic process. A bipartisan crusade for transparency had morphed into a partisan cover-up. Instead of protecting justice, it looked as though the system had been weaponized to shield those in power. The broader implications are chilling. If allegations of suppression hold, this is not just about one set of files, it's about whether democratic institutions still serve the people, or whether they bend entirely to the interests of the elite. Oversight is not supposed to be optional. The law is not supposed to be negotiable. When congressional committees become stages for partisan theater, instead of forums for accountability, the very foundations of governance begin to crack. Justice ceases to be impartial. It becomes a tool, wielded for protection or punishment, depending on political convenience. And hovering over it all is the mystery of the Epstein files themselves. What names are inside? What evidence exists? And why did those who once demanded exposure suddenly decide there was nothing left to show? The refusal to answer only fuels speculation. Was the reversal driven by fear of reputational damage, by pressure from those implicated, or by something darker, an orchestrated decision that the truth itself posed too great a risk to power? These are the questions the American public is left to wrestle with. So here's where we leave you. In this hearing, you saw promises made and promises broken. You heard about federal resources twisted away from real threats to serve political optics. You saw oversight laws ignored, accountability sidelined, and transparency traded for silence. And at the heart of it all, you saw the mystery of files that everyone once agreed should be released, now buried behind a wall of obstruction. The truth is simple: the American people deserve answers. They deserve to know whether the files contain names of high-profile figures, and they deserve to see whether justice is being manipulated to serve power, rather than the public. The hearing revealed more than a cover-up. It revealed a system willing to betray its own principles to shield the powerful. Now it's your turn. Do you believe the sudden reversal was genuine, or do you see it as another calculated cover-up? Should the files be released no matter who is named, or is secrecy somehow justified in the name of stability? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep uncovering the stories that power would rather keep buried, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who still believes accountability matters. Because the fight for truth is far from over.